Hi, I'm Bob Weir with another interview of People in the News in North Texas. My guest today is Vincent Gallo, candidate for the Republican nomination for Congress in the 26th District. Thanks for being here, Vincent.
Thank you, Bob.
If you would, please begin by telling our viewers something about your background, education, occupation, etc.
I've lived in Texas for a long time, ever since I was in the 4th grade. I grew up on a small ranch in East Texas in a little town called Big Sandy. I graduated high school from there. I attended the University of North Texas and graduated in 1984 with a business degree. I spent a short time in the financial services business working for Merrill Lynch and another company in Midland, Texas. I got out of the financial service business and went into police work in 1989 and worked for the city of Carrollton as a police officer from 1989 to 2001. I was a patrol officer, a patrol supervisor, a criminal investigative division supervisor for adult and juvenile services, and I was also a tactical team leader and supervisor for 4 years.
You and I have something in common, so was I.
We do.
Me
And
too.
congratulations for surviving, and we appreciate your service for the time that you put in.
And the same to you, Vince.
In 2001, I started a small construction company called Copper Mountain Construction, and I've done residential, light, commercial framing, and residential construction since that time. In 2015 or so, I throttled that business back to try to help elevate my wife's career. She went back to school and got her MBA, and she's a nurse director at a local hospital. I have a 34-year-old autistic son that lives at home with us that requires a significant amount of care. And so I do my own private jobs now, but I do not solicit work for hire at this point.
Okay, Vince, what I'm going to do is I'll go over several questions. I could ask you first, what do if you had to select three of the most important issues facing the country, what would they be?
Well, right now we've got $34 trillion in debt, or will have by the time Michael Burgess finishes his next term if he is reelected. That's one of the most important. We've got a completely unsecured southern border. I read an article in Breitbart News the other day that said that there were 2,000 people in 2 days in one sector alone that crossed the southern border. You're being told by politicians, both state and federally, that there's not a problem on the southern border, and I'm telling you there's an immense problem on the southern border. Annualized, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 4 million people crossing that border based on the numbers that they're given, especially when you consider the ones that are not listed as the apprehended people. And lastly, we could argue all day long about how much money you want to spend on social services or particular aspects of the budget. But I will tell you, over the last 25 years, I've noticed that there is an increasing level of hostility towards the American public by the people who are their elected representatives, and they're dismissive about the concerns of the people in this country. People in government work for the people of the United States. The people in government are not the administrators or not the rulers of the people in the United States.
Amen. I would give you an amen to that. If you were elected to Congress, why do you feel you could do a better job in Washington than Congressman Burgess?
Michael Burgess is a nice man, and I have nothing against Michael Burgess at all personally. He's a great guy, he's a moral individual, and I voted for him repeatedly. So this is not an issue of me having a problem with Michael Burgess personally. But from a standpoint of a congressman and the position that he's in, right now, the people that I consider to be pro-American, America First policymakers, the people that are in the Freedom Caucus, he is not a part of that organization. And I believe that with a new group of people that are coming into Congress that have expressed very conservative, pro-America, America First policies, that it's important to build coalitions with people who are going to aggressively push America First policies. He is not doing that. I will.
Okay, some specific topics now. Do you think Roe versus Wade should be overturned?
I do. I believe that that is an issue that should be determined by the states and the states alone. If California wants to engage in an immoral outlook towards ending life, that's the people in California's business. I believe that this country should celebrate life, and I believe that there are specific, very limited sets of circumstances where an abortion might be necessary, but those are very few and far between because most of them are done for convenience, and I cannot support that.
All right, Vince, how many genders are there?
There are 2 genders. There's only been 2 genders, and there will ever only be 2 genders. You can surgically alter yourself, and you can claim that you're something that you're not, but you have no business forcing other people to participate in the fantasy that you are not what you are.
And what is your view on critical race theory?
I think critical race theory is one of the most damaging things that you can do to a society if you're pushing that issue, because it's dividing people among racial lines, and it is especially corrosive in two locations, and that is in grade schools and high schools and in the United States military. When you have battalion commanders standing in front of their troops and telling white soldiers in front of other ethnicities that they are the problem, they are part of the problem, that is not acceptable, and that leads to disaster, and I cannot support that.
Okay, let's move on to this. What do you think about vaccine and mask mandates?
I think if you want to wear a mask, you are more than welcome to wear a mask, and if you want a vaccine and you want to get that vaccine, you can get the vaccine. But my opinion about that is that the vaccine has been relabeled as a vaccine based on what traditionally would be considered to be a vaccine. It's more like an inoculation shot now. The statistics that are coming out now will show you that there are significant numbers of people that have been vaccinated that have the same viral load of people who have not been vaccinated, so they can catch the disease after they've been vaccinated, and they're transmitting that disease to other people. And for a disease that is essentially a 99.5% survivability rate, I think what has been done to the United States economy and the shutdowns and the destruction of people's businesses is unacceptable, and I think that politicians should be a lot more careful about mandating that people destroy what they've spent many years to build, as opposed to coming across the country with blanket statements. I am not in favor of shutdowns, and I'm not in favor of forcing people to be vaccinated, and I'm also not in favor of creating lists of people on databases that have been vaccinated as well. I think that leads to disaster.
Okay, how about the, how can voters feel secure about the integrity of the voting system?
It's a very, very hard question, and right now I'm not sure that I have a positive answer to tell them that they can feel secure about the voting system. I believe that the only way that you're going to completely secure that is to go back to a much more basic methodology, which includes essentially paper ballots that are collated and guarded, and that the notion of being able to transfer data over the internet and have the possibility of that data being manipulated is not an acceptable solution. You have to go back to the basics of one person, one vote, a verified vote that is done via voter ID, a verifiable ID, in order to make sure that your outcome of your elections are fair.
All right, Vince, let me get to something international. Has there been enough attention paid to China and its growing power in the world?
Absolutely not. My contention is that the United States of America, Bob, needs to have a program that is much like the Manhattan Project was during World War II, and the purpose of that project would be to start the process of the world economy delinking itself from China. China is a communist nation that is hell-bent on the domination of the world as its lone superpower. And we have too many people inside business in the United States and inside the government of the United States that have shorted America and begun to align themselves with China because they think that they're going to get some sort of reward for doing that. They're feeding the beast, and the beast is going to turn around and eat them. It's not acceptable. And the people in Congress that have stood by and watched our manufacturing base be eroded, they've watched our intellectual base being stolen, they've watched as China has built ports and economic stranglehold all around the world to try to get people locked into doing business with them at the expense of republics and democracies all over the world. It's a dangerous trend, and it needs to be stopped.
All right, and all right, well, we're coming to, I see, a wrap-up now. It goes very quickly. Let me ask you if you have anything else you'd like to add before we close.
Well, Bob, I'd just like to say to the American public, you have a choice coming up on March 1st, especially all across America. You're going to have an opportunity, including in Texas, to send a whole new group of people to Washington, D.C. that have articulated that they have very conservative principles, that their main driving reason for running is to ensure an America First policy is instituted in Washington. My statement to the people of Texas is, if you want more of what you've been getting for the last 20 years, then you can vote to send Michael Burgess and the rest of the people who have created the situation that we just got done discussing back to Washington. If you want to try to save the United States from a destruction that will be wrought upon it by people who are not interested in looking for the preservation and the long-term prosperity of the United States, you're going to have to look to somebody like me. And so I'm asking you to give me an opportunity to put myself between you and the people in Washington that are looking at people out in America and in Texas as the problem instead of the solution. I believe the people in Texas are the solution to the problem, not the problem.
Well, thank you for being here, Vince, and good luck in
Thank
the
you.
election.
I appreciate it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, and thank you for watching.